This video is brought to you by FS Academy. FS Academy offers a range of professional tutorial packages for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Each FS Academy package comes with a number of tutorials, as well as a comprehensive manual which will expand upon the theory of the content covered. The FS Academy series is created and taught by a real-world Airbus A320 captain, so the instruction throughout is both accurate and informed. And the entire FS Academy range will be on sale over the festive period. Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's that time of year again. Christmas is rapidly approaching, and as is somewhat traditional at this point on Into the Blue simulations, we're going to kick the festive period off with a Christmas themed video and trip up towards Rovaniemi. Last year, some of you may recall, we had to save the day with a last minute toy delivery from Tallinn, courtesy of the Trotters Independent Traders DC6. This year, unfortunately, we have another Christmas-based emergency. It's going to come down to us once again to save the big day. In a bit of a last-minute shock, the Finnish aviation authorities actually grounded Santa's reindeer this year. Something about 200-year-old reindeer actually requiring a medical before they go flying. Anyway, obviously all of that leaves Santa in a little bit of a bind for his Christmas Eve deliveries, so we're going to have to step in here and figure out what can be done. It seems to me that if you haven't got a reindeer to pull your sleigh, then probably the next best thing is a ruddy big Doberman. It just so happens I know exactly the man to call to help us out in averting our Christmas-based catastrophe. The gentleman that we're after goes by the name of Maverick. He's a channel viewer, long-time flight simulation enthusiast, as well as being a lover of Dobermans. Maverick has, I believe, fostered many Dobermans over the years, and he's also worked alongside the charity Lynx Doberman Rescue. Anyway, that's the good news. Unfortunately, the bad news is that Maverick's left his four-legged friends scattered around the country, so we're going to have to fly frantically around the UK here, collect the dogs up, and then ship them over towards Santa. Very kindly, Lynx Doberman have lent us their rescue Twin Otter for the flight today. So to say thank you to them, we're going to be running a little bit of a charitable drive alongside the video, as well as a separate prize giveaway. I'll leave details of both down in the video description below. We'll also talk more about them at the end of the video. As always though, I do hope you enjoy it. If you do, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. Anyway, before we can find our dogs, we've first got to track down Maverick. We'll get the aircraft airborne. We're going to be first heading over towards Burning Blue Designs, Andrews Field. So we've just arrived to a very beautiful morning here on the ground in Andrews Field. We've got the Lynx Doberman Rescue Twin Otter parked up, waiting some fuel for our onwards journey. We've got a pretty busy day ahead of us here, so we better find Maverick. I gather he's currently tending to the bar, so we'll head off in that direction. Okay, so we've now got Maverick on board the aircraft. He's going to be taking care of everything down the back for us on our flight today. We want a fairly quick turnaround here, so we'll get the door closed up, start running through our pre-start checks. So the flight control locks are off, parking brake is set, fire handles are both in, emergency fuel switches both selected to normal, the emergency boost pumps both off, fuel selector set to normal, boost pumps off, and static source again selected to normal. Ventilation fan is off. For the inverter switch, we're on inverter number 1. De-icing switches are off. Cabin lighting and signs are set. Anti-collision light is on. Bleed air switches are both off. Pitot heat is off. Generator switches are off. And the bus tie switch set to normal. Flap handle is selected up. Fuel levers are off. Prop levers set fully forward. And power levers set to flight idle. Windshield heat and wipers are both off. Landing lights are off. Ignition switch set to normal and caged. DC master can go on, and we'll be starting on the battery, so the external battery switch can go through to battery. Bus voltage, we're looking for at least 18 volts, showing about 24. Caution lights are checked. We'll carry out a fire detection test. That's good. And for the fuel quantities, again, we've got a fully fueled aircraft here. It's about £1,300 in the aft tank, and about £1,200 in the forward tank. we'll just carry out a fuel quantity indication test. So the needles will roll back towards 0. And just waiting for them to come up again, showing the correct values. Whilst we wait for those, we'll just cycle through our Garmin unit screens. And the fuel is indicating correctly, so we're good for the start. For the start itself, fuel levers, once again, are in the off position, prop levers set fully forward, power levers set to idle. Boost pumps can come on. And we'll be starting the right-hand engine first. We are all clear on the right. And selecting the starter through to the right engine. So as I say, obviously during the flight we'll get a good feel for the sounds, the updated sounds of the aircraft. Just waiting till we come up through 15% here on the NG, which we now have. So the fuel can go into the right-hand engine. And as always, monitoring the engine as it spools up, the oil pressure's coming up. Temperature looks good. Prop RPM coming up. And looks like we have a good start there on the right, so we'll start the left. Again, just making sure we're all clear, which we are. Oil pressure coming up, just through 10% on the NG. There's 15%, so fuel on. Again, temperature's looking good. The right engine's stabilised around 40% there on the prop, just below 5 psi on the torque. And it looks like we're going to top out roughly the same parameters there on the left, so we have 2 good starts. Generators can go on. For the after start checks, the compass and gyros showing 180 there on the HSI. That concurs with the compass. Altimeter is set. We've got QNH of 1013 on both sides, and that's giving us 300 feet, which concurs with the aerodrome elevation. Caution lights, just the pneumatic low pressure, that will extinguish later on. Radios and autopilot, we're going to be cruising over to Waltham around 3,000 feet, so we'll pre-select that ahead of time. That will obviously be somewhat dependent as well here on the cloud base. The radios, we'll leave the comm radios as is. In terms of the nav radios, we've already got the Woodley NDB tuned up. We're going to use that inbound towards Waltham. And for later on, we've got the Goodwood VOR on a frequency of 11475, but we're not going to need that until the second leg. Obviously departing initially runway heading, so we've got the bug there set for a westerly heading. And it's going to be a course over towards Waltham of 242, so we'll set that on the CDI. There's 242. So radios and autopilot are set. We'll set the GPS up once we're airborne. For the before taxi checks, the signs once again are set as required. We'll check the brakes on the way out. We'll just carry out the before takeoff checks here as well in our present position before we make our way down towards the runway. So trim tabs. Elevator trim is set. We're going to leave the rudder trim as is. Flaps can come through to 10 degrees. And just waiting there till we see 10 degrees indicated, which we now have. Flight instruments once again are checked, radios are set, prop levers are fully forward, auto feather is armed, engine instruments are checked, bleed air we can take on for the takeoff, we're not performance limited today. So bleed air is selected on, de-ice is not required, however we will just get the pitot heat on there as well. Taxi lights can come on, and we can make our way out towards the runway. Okay, so we're lined up here now on the westerly runway, just running through the lineup checks. The flight controls Up full and free, transponder can go through to out. Landing lights are on, strobe lights are on. For the caution lights, again, just that pneumatic low pressure. You'll see that extinguish in just a moment as we come up on the power levers. So park brake off. Just going to hold the aircraft on the brakes initially here. Fairly short runway for the Twin Otter out of Andrews Field. So feeding in the power. Once again, hopefully you'll get a good feel for the new aircraft sounds here as well during the takeoff. So caution lights are out. And off the brakes. Power is set. And easing back on the yoke. And we're airborne. So climbing runway heading initially, just till we're up through 500 feet. Temperatures and pressures looking good. Up through 300 feet now, so the flaps can come in. And up through 500 feet, we'll start our turn onto our heading, coming back to climb power as well. We're looking for 45 PSI on the torque, 75% on the RPM. The CDI bar just coming in there, but we can disregard that. That's based off the Goodwood VOR presumably, if not another station, but ultimately we're not tracking on the VOR for the time being. Okay, so climb power is set. We'll maintain around 110 knots for now here in the climb. We'll trim for that. So the aircraft nicely trimmed, running through the after takeoff checks. Flaps are up, auto feather can come off. Climb power is set, nose wheel steering is centered, yaw damper is on. Signs are set as required. And the landing lights will leave on. Obviously we're going to be down below 10,000 feet throughout the flight. Up through 1,000 to go. We'll centre up the heading bug. Again, just disregarding the CDI bar for now. And looks like we should be good here as well to level off at 3,000 feet. We'll be well below the cloud layer. So just continuing the climb here up to 3,000. We'll get the aircraft levelled off. We'll get the autopilot in. We can set Waltham as well on the GPS. Certainly though, very beautiful, seasonal appropriate scenery here in the UK currently. We'll obviously get a chance to enjoy more of the scenery here as we go. So just approaching 3,000, we'll get ready for the level off. Once again, trimming accordingly. We'll leave our power setting here for the cruise. We want to keep the speed up here as we make our way essentially around London. Waltham is our second longest leg here. We've got about 51 miles over towards the airfield. So nicely trimmed there now. We'll get the autopilot in. A little bit of an aggressive capture there. We'll go into heading and out. Looks like we're going to capture there at 3,100, so we'll just descend back down towards 3,000 feet. As I say, we'll set Waltham in the GPS. So we're looking for Echo Golf Lima Mike. Getting a little bit bumped around here as well. And White Waltham. So we can activate that. We may as well set the CDI to GPS for now, and then at least we're getting some relevant information. So nicely centered up there on the CDI as you'd expect, leveled off here at 3,000. The after takeoff checks are complete. We'll make our way over towards Waltham, enjoy some of the scenery en route. Okay, so we just come up overhead the motorway. You can see it's been a fairly bumpy old ride en route towards White Waltham. About another 10 miles to run here inbound. I think you can just about make out the field off the nose. So we'll start our descent. We'll come down to 1,500 feet, or 1,600 feet initially, with the aerodrome elevation being around 120 feet. We'll come out, and we'll just go for a VS of minus 500. We'll just come slightly back as well on the power for the descent. And running through our descent checks. Fuel quantities look good. We've burned around £100 there on each main tank. We've got about 1,200 now on the aft and around 1,100 in the forward. So fuel quantities are checked, certainly sufficient there. Caution lights are checked. De-ice is not required. Altimeters are set. And for the approach itself, signs once again are on. Landing lights are on. The checklist complete. It's probably going to be fairly tricky here to actually spot Waltham with the snow coverage around and the sim generally having a bit of a proclivity for covering any runways or roads in snow, but again we've got the GPS here to help us, and we've got about just under 10 miles now to run inbound towards the field. You can see Waltham just on the edge of Heathrow's airspace here, so we're actually busting right through the middle of Heathrow's airspace currently, but again obviously a very important mission for us here today, and we've got carte blanche to fly where we like and how we like. But now we may as well stay in GPS here on the CDI. That's going to guide us straight in. You can see as well we've got nav selected on the autopilot. Continuing here in the descent, we've got around another 700 feet here to go. So we'll just start keeping a really good eye out now for Waltham. Again, just using the GPS here as a bit of a reference. We'll level off at 1,600 feet, we'll overfly the airfield, which I think is just off the nose. You can just about make out the westerly runway there. Let's say we'll overfly the airfield, get a bit of a feel for what's going on, and then we'll come in to land. I think we'll land on the westerly runway. So we can actually disconnect the autopilot here. Seems as though my keybind isn't working, which is a bit odd. We'll just fly manually. Just coming out to the right here so we can see the runway. Certainly some pretty heavy snow coverage there at the field. Again, it's a real shame in the sim that runways get so readily covered in snow. It's not so unrealistic here where, for example, the runways may not have been cleared, but even at major international airports, the runways are one of the first things actually to get contaminated in the sim. Anyway, we'll just make a bit of a rough and ready loop here. Back round onto a bit of a left-hand downwind for the westerly runway. We can start slowing up as well, so again we'll just reduce the power. And as it is pretty hard here to make out the runways, we'll use the road as a bit of a reference. There's a fairly major road you may have noticed on the way in that parallels the runway. So as I say, on a bit of a left-hand downwind here now, again very tricky to make out the runway currently. We'll just track present heading, following the motorway just down below us. 1,500 feet will do for now. That speed continuing to roll off. For the before landing checks, we'll get those done as well. So nose wheel steering is centered, yaw damper can come off. Just holding out the flaps, the prop levers can come up once we're on final. And I'm running through my own personal checks, so the brakes are checked and off, undercarriage is down. Fuel pumps are on. Landing lights are on. Flight instruments are checked. And And again, just coming back off the power levers there, we've got the pneumatic low pressure caution light there again. We'll start taking some flap. Just come through to flaps 10 initially. There's an altitude alert, that's fine. We're just continuing around here in a bit of a shallow descent. And visual with where the runway is more or less. Again, difficult to specifically make out the runway. Keep taking the flap, we'll go through to flaps 20. And keep the speed for now around 90 knots, so just above blue line. Come through to flaps 30. It'll be a flaps 40 landing. It's again a fairly short runway here at Waltham. So just coming around onto final, we'll take flaps 40. Prop levers can go back to fully fine. And pitches full fine, undercarriage is down, flaps are set. Landing clearance not required. The runway looks to be clear of any traffic, certainly not clear of any contamination. Let's check 500, just coming up on the power again. Quite a lot of drag there with flaps 40, just keeping that speed above the blue line. An awful lot of drag at flaps 40, needing quite a lot of power here just to keep the speed up. Obviously we can't make out much in terms of the runway, but we're in broadly the correct position, so we'll just assume we're okay to land. I think we can just about make out the markings there. Off the power levers. There's touchdown. We don't really need to, but we'll come through on the beach range here just to save the brakes. So out of the beach range once again, we'll peel off to the left here, backtrack parallel to the runway, and we'll head off. We'll go and find the first of our Dobermans. So we've just found the first two of our doggies down here at White Waltham. It looks as though Maverick was expecting slightly warmer climbs down south. Obviously, I've been working flat out here watching the autopilot fly the aircraft down to Waltham. So just taking the opportunity here to have a little bit of a rest, warm up with a cup of tea. In the meantime, we'll leave Maverick to continue on with the task of trying to persuade two Dobermans into the back of a Twin Otter. Cheers, Mav. So we now have our poochers safely on board the aircraft. They're boxed up down the back, we obviously don't want them running around. We're now down at the threshold again for runway 25. We've obviously got the engines running and we're pretty much ready to go. Just running through the lineup checks once again. The flight controls are full and free. Transponder is set to out. Landing lights are on. Strobe lights are on. Caution lights, again just the pneumatic low pressure. And runway heading we'll check as we come onto the runway. So park brake off. All clear on final. Now we'll just get ourselves lined up here on runway 25. Again, very tricky to make out the markings. I think we've got them just off the nose. So 25 right. Now we'll take the aircraft on the roll. Runway heading looks good. Coming up on the power levers. I do like those sounds overall. I haven't tried the FT Sim sound pack yet, which people seem to speak very highly of, but again, certainly the aircraft is much improved. So power is set, speed looks good, again back on the yoke. And airborne for leg 2. So once more we'll climb initially around 100 knots. Birds just passing off the nose there, managing to avoid those. Already up through 300 feet, so flaps can come up. and up through 500 feet. Heading out towards the next destination is 179. Just getting a little bit of a downdraft there, pushing the nose down. And now coming into a bit of an updraft. So turning on to 179. I'm sure many of you have already guessed destination number 2 with the little clue that I gave earlier on. But we'll just get ourselves established on the heading, trimmed out, and then we'll discuss the destination a little bit more. So there's our heading. We'll centre up the heading bug. It's 1,000 feet to go. And for the after takeoff checks, once again the flaps are up. We'll come back to climb power. Auto feather can come off. Nose wheel is centred, yaw damper is on. Signs are set as required, and once again we'll leave the landing lights. So once more, climbing up to 3,000 feet. Again, we're going to be cutting here through the London Heathrow airspace on our heading. There's 3,000. So again, we'll just get the aircraft leveled off, trimmed out, get the autopilot in, and then we can set up for leg number 2. Nicely in trim now. So autopilot on, there's heading, and out. Looks like we've captured there at 3,000 feet, we'll keep an eye on that. So engine power settings look good, fuel state's checked. As discussed, we've already got the Goodwood VOR tuned up here on nav 1, we've already identified that as well, Golf Whiskey Charlie. Showing about 34 miles to run there, so hopefully that's a pretty clear indication of our next en route destination. We are heading inbound towards Burning Blue Designs Goodwood. Once again, we can just select that as a direct to as well on the GPS. So now we're looking for Echo Golf Hotel Romeo. And interestingly, Forward Farm there is actually the additional airport that came with the Got Friends Wilga. Anyway, we're not heading there today. So Echo Golf Hotel Romeo, Goodwood. We can activate that. And once again, we could come into nav here, but we'll just stay in heading for now. We'll just track the radial inbound. Showing about 32 miles to run there currently. So again, we'll keep a nice high cruise power setting here, try and keep the pace up. We're doing about 150 knots over the ground currently. We'll enjoy a little bit more of the en route scenery over the rather snowy conditions here in the UK before we make our approach in towards Goodwood. So as you can see, we're now approaching the English coastline, and as a result also approaching Goodwood. Still nicely established here on the radial, showing around just under 10 miles to run now towards the field itself. So once again, we'll come out of out. We'll go with VS minus 500, and we'll descend ourselves down to 1600 feet. Again, the Goodwood aerodrome elevation is 111 feet. So there's VS minus 500, 1600 pre-selected. Again, we'll start coming off the power levers. And I don't think that Goodwood's going to be any easier to spot here. There is actually a racetrack around the airfield itself, which might help us a little bit, depending on whether or not that's also covered in snow. Looks like we're pretty much heading directly in towards the field currently. We should, if anything, have it off the right wing, and I think we can see it there off our 1 o'clock. Otherwise, it's just off the nose. Anyway, once again, running through the approach checks. So signs are on, landing lights are on, nose wheel steering is centered, yaw damper is off. Flaps and prop levers we can leave for now. Just coming down through 2,600 feet, so another 1,000 feet here before we level off. And sure enough, there's our caution. Showing 5 miles to run now. Looks like the airfield is pretty much off the nose. And in fact, I think we can see it quite clearly this time. It looks to be a little bit clearer. This forest off the nose, just the other side of that, there's a fairly heavily covered field, and just the other side of that, I think, is Goodwood. We'll leave the autopilot in for now. Again, we'll make a quick lap around the airfield. Planning on landing on the southerly runway. It's the quickest for us in terms of vacating off towards the parking area. Over off out towards the west, we've got the Solent. You can just about make out the Isle of Wight as well. Solent Airport's actually Burning Blue Design's newest scenery. Hopefully we'll be checking that out fairly soon. They're coming down through 2,000 feet, still good here on the speed. And you can see the airfield quite clearly now. Hopefully as well you can see the racetrack. There's 2,000 feet. And actually, I think I said we're landing on the southerly runway. I meant the southeasterly. You can see it's just crossing around 45 degrees off the nose currently. And if we land in that direction, we can head, as I say, straight over towards the parking area. So once again, we'll take the autopilot out. We'll just swing out to the right and make a left orbit around the field. So the racetrack down below us, actually got quite an interesting video, I think at least, taking a Mercedes C63 around the track. That's currently available in early access, but I'll upload it at some point at a later date. Certainly the driving dynamics in the sim leave a lot to be desired. I'm sure though my driving also has a little bit to do with it. You can see there's a couple of cars there lapping the track as well. As always, really nice details from Burning Blue Design. So looking good on the altitude, good on the speed. Just coming onto a bit of a crosswind leg here for the runway. Again, a few birds just passing off the left wing. You can see as well there the Goodwood VOR just off the left-hand edge of the prop. So as I say, we'll take the southeasterly runway. It looks to be the slightly longer of the two as well. Coming back on the power levers again, letting that speed start to reduce. And we'll turn on to downwind. Still getting bumped around here. I'm surprised just how bumpy the conditions actually are today. There's not much wind around. It looks to be pretty settled conditions otherwise. So just coming on to downwind. Over some of the higher terrain here currently. Once again, we have the pneumatic low pressure caution. We can disregard that for now. And again, running through our checks, brakes are checked and off, undercarriage is down. Fuel quantities are checked, flight instruments look good, landing lights are on, harness is secure. Just continue to track outbound on the downwind. We'll take flaps 10. Speed looking good, around 100 knots. And we can start our turn now onto base. It's all clear on final. Go flaps 20. Start the aircraft descending as well. And we're quite high here currently, so we'll go all the way through to flaps 40. Again, just keeping the speed around 90 knots for now. The before landing checks, nose wheel steering is centered, yaw damper is off, flaps are set, prop levers. Again, we can come all the way through to the fully forward position. So props are set. Okay, just starting to come back onto profile. Speed just above blue line. Again, we're going to have to come quite high up on the power again here to keep the speed. Let's check to 500. And once again, pitch is full fine, undercarriage is down. Flaps are set. We're good on the landing clearance, the runway is clear. Speed just getting a little bit low. So again, feeding in some power. A little bit easier to see the runway this time. And we do have plenty of runway, so we'll just let the aircraft roll through initially. Off the power levers. And there's touchdown. So as I say, we'll just let the aircraft roll through momentarily. We'll head off over towards the parking area and we'll go and find dogs number 3 and 4. So we just got the aircraft parked up, and of course a visit to Goodwood wouldn't be complete without a Spitfire. Looks as though we've got a Mark 9 there off the nose. On a separate note, Santa Claus, if you're listening, that's on my Christmas list for sure. Anyway, we're running a little bit behind schedule now, so we've just left the right engine running here to try and expedite things a little bit. The good news is though, it looks as though Maverick's found our second set of dogs, so we should have those on board the aircraft fairly shortly and be on our way towards destination number 3. Okay, so we're actually down at the holding point for runway 24 this time. The wind favours it slightly. It's closer as well in terms of the taxi. So again, just running through our lineup checks, flight controls. Our full and free transponder is set to out. Landing lights are on. Strobe lights are on. Caution lights, again, just the pneumatic low pressure. We'll check the runway heading in just a moment. Park brake off. And clear on final. So we'll get ourselves positioned here onto runway 24. Next heading is actually going to be 058. So there'll be a bit of a 180 degree turn back onto our flight plan course. Just momentarily holding the aircraft on the brakes. Runway heading looks good. That checks as well with the compass. Plenty of runway here, so again, just off the brakes onto the power levers. And away we go. So power is set. Get on the speed. Back on the yoke. And we're airborne once again. As I say, we'll take a bit of a 180. We'll go low level here as well, just to take in some of the racetrack. You can disregard the bank angle warnings for now. And flaps can come up. Start coming back as well on the power. So saying goodbye to Goodwood. And bringing the prop levers now back to climb power once again. So climb power is set, more or less looking good on the heading. We're going to have to centre up that heading bug again though. And for the after takeoff checks, the flaps are up. Auto feather can come off. Climb power is set. Nose wheel steering is centred, yaw damper is on. And once again, sound and landing lights we can leave as is. So good on the heading for now. We can disregard the CDI for now, although it's based off the Goodwood VOR, so it's broadly accurate. Anyway, destination number 3, we're going to tune up 117.3 on nav 1. And for anyone that knows the UK particularly well, that's the Detling VOR. You can see we have Delta Echo Tango identified. Just approaching 3,000, get the aircraft levelled off. And we'll set 3,000, then we'll get the autopilot in. Aircraft still wanting to climb, just using a little bit of nose down trim. Heading bug's good, so once again we'll go autopilot, heading. And we'll just stick with VS minus 500 till we capture there, we've got out. So Detling, for those of you who don't know, is actually located rather close to Rochester, which is, of course, destination number 3. And once again we can enter that as a direct to via the GPS. Rochester is Echo Golf Tango Oscar. And Echo Golf Tango Oscar, Rochester. So we can activate that, showing about 50 miles to run based off the VOR DME, which is slightly offset from the airfield. Once again, looking good there in terms of our course. We'll come back into nav. We'll just wait until the aircraft centred up there on its heading, and then we'll set the heading bug. Nicely maintaining 3,000 feet, we'll just come up slightly again on the power levers, there's 45 psi. And looking pretty good there now on the heading as well. So leg number 3, we'll go and pick up the last of our dogs over in Rochester. We're going to have to stop over in Rochester, fill up the tanks again. We've still got plenty of fuel on board, we're down to around 1,900 pounds of fuel, but nevertheless we need plenty to get us over towards Rovaniemi. We're going to have a few stopovers en route as well. But for now, anyway, just continuing the cruise here, over towards our penultimate destination of Rochester. So we're now approaching the eastern coastline of the UK, with Rochester just off the nose. We've got Southend off in the distance there, out at our 11 o'clock. Once again, just coming up on 10 miles to run. This time though, aerodrome elevation is around 400 feet, so we'll descend down to 1900 feet initially. So we have 1900 set, and again we'll come into vertical speed. We'll go VS minus 500 once again. We can get the aircraft leveled off a little bit early. As with the other two airfields, I'm not entirely sure what sort of a state Rochester's runway is going to be in, but we'll overfly Rochester, see what we find. Just coming up on 1000 to go. In terms of our descent checks, fuel quantities, we're down to about 900 pounds now in the aft tank, and around 800 there in the forward. Obviously still plenty of fuel here for the arrival and landing into Rochester. Caution lights are checked, de-ice not required, altimeters are set, signs are on, landing lights are on, nose wheel steering is centred, yaw damper is off, and again just holding the flaps and the props. So that's our descent checklist complete. Also running through there on the approach checks. We'll get our downwind checks out of the way ahead of time this time, so brakes are checked and off, undercarriage is down, fuel quantities are checked, flight instruments are checked, landing lights are on, harness is secure, and hopefully everybody's secure down the back as well. So keeping a good eye out for the airfield. We've got 7 miles to run now on the DME, but that's the Detling DME. Obviously we're more interested in Rochester. You can see Detling just out to the southeast. About 300 feet further here in the descent, you can see Rochester now off the nose. Looks like there is a little bit more snow coverage around than we saw out of Goodwood. Anyway, once again coming off the power levers, we'll level off, let that speed start to reduce. And again, there's a slight wind out from the west, so if the runway suits us, we'll take the interwind runway of course, but otherwise we may well prefer actually landing out towards the north here, and then that way again we can just taxi straight in towards the apron itself. Same plan of action then, we'll take out the autopilot, levelling off at 1900 feet, and we'll make a lap here around Rochester. You can see we do have the northerly facing runway, which again I think is going to be our best option here currently. Again, plenty of runway, so the very light wind isn't really a concern. And actually the parking area here is up at the southerly end, so we'll take the southerly runway. The wind is straight across the runway there, but again it's only a few knots. So we'll just come straight in onto a left-hand downwind here. And again, we'll try and pick out some features to help us line up with the runway, since we're not going to be very easily able to visually identify it from a distance. We'll use the inlet here off our 11 o'clock. So back off those power levers, letting that speed start to reduce as we track on our downwind. And just about keeping sight with the runway there, that's going to go behind the engine in just a moment's time. So speed's good, we'll take flaps 10. And we can start to turn inbound now towards Rochester. Again, we'll go flaps 20. Get the aircraft descending as well. There's a runway out at our 10 o'clock. No traffic on final. Speed just getting a little bit low. So coming up on the power again. We'll keep flaps 20 for now. Now we can start our turn, round onto final, back out towards the south. Go flaps 30. We'll try flaps 30 landing this time. We've got plenty of runway, and as we've discussed previously, flaps 40 seems to be an awful lot of drag, needing quite a lot of power to maintain the speed. Even at flaps 30 here, you can see just coming below blue line, so increasing the thrust once again. So props can come through to fully fine. Pitches full fine, undercarriages down, flaps are set. We're good on the landing clearance, the runway is clear. Let's check 500. There's one white, one red. The Twin Otter really wants to seem to sit just below blue line. Actually having to proactively fly the aircraft down here to keep the speed. Slightly high there on the Pappy. Happy though, we'll continue. Again, we've got plenty of runway. We won't bother with beta range when we touch down. Off the power levers. There's touchdown. And actually, it looks like the wind was favouring runway 20 in the end. The apron's off there at our 11 o'clock, so we'll make our way inbound towards the parking area. And we're going to track down Fido number 5 and 6. Great news is we've just found the last two of our Dobermans. Maverick's just gathering them up at the moment. Still surprised he's not getting a little bit chilly there. Anyway, the rescue twatter's just getting a top up of the tanks. As I say, we've got quite a long en route segment over towards Rovaniemi. We've got a planned technical stop en route as well at Oslo for some more fuel. Overall, things going quite nicely according to plan, although the weather is just starting to set in ever so slightly. So we better get ourselves back on board the aircraft and ready to go as quick as we can. So there you go guys, Christmas is saved once again, and I do hope you enjoyed another festive outing here on the channel. I said I'd give just a couple more details both about the charity event as well as the prize giveaway. Firstly, I thought it would be nice, given the content of the video, to try and raise a little bit of money for the Lynx Doberman rescue. That's not something I've been asked to do. Maverick had the livery made up for his own enjoyment, but I thought since we used it, we might as well try and give a little something back. I've set up a Just Giving page. Again, the link for that will be down in the video description, so please feel free to give a little something if you like, if you're able to. As far as the prize giveaway goes, the format for that is pretty straightforward. I've left a couple of questions regarding the video down in the description. All you need to do there, much the same as last year, is answer those questions, email with the answers. Again, the email address will be down in the video description. I'll pick a winner from those who managed to answer all of the questions correctly, and that particular individual will win the Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft add-on of their choice. Further to that, for every entry that I get with the prize giveaway, I'll be donating £1 myself towards Link's Doberman Rescue. Although obviously I will have to cap that at something reasonable, just on the very slim off chance that the video does happen to do particularly well. But anyway, certainly worth entering the prize giveaway. Not only of course do you have the chance to win something for yourselves, but you're also indirectly helping to support the charity. Anyway, ladies and gents, that's just about it from me for now until after the festive period. Just before I sign off, once again a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for another year of support. All that remains is for me to wish you a very Merry Christmas, a brilliant holiday period, hopefully with lots of good food, surrounded by those that you love and care about, and maybe as well, if you're lucky, Santa will have paid you a visit. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.